Good evening, everybody. With the time being 7:44, I'd like to call the Government Operations Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Petrilla.
Here.
Rubble.
Here.
Bessner.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Sulkaitis.
Here.
Folks.
Here.
Bungard.
Here.
Munns. Here. Lencioni.
Wonderful. First
Yeah.
up, I'm looking for a motion and a second for you to get, did they?
We got it.
Look for a motion and a second to approve the omnibus bill.
So moved.
Moved by Folks, seconded by Wirball. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. That is approved. First up, we have item 5A. Eric Creighton from GIS is going to make a presentation.
All right. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Eric Creighton, I'm the GIS coordinator here at the city, and I'm here to talk about our utility network migration services. Some of you may remember I was here last fall to speak about phase 1, and I'm here again to speak about now phase 2 of this project. But first, I want to give a little bit of background on it as we delve back into this, and why this is really important to the city. We have data standardization. Our data models were created 15 to 20 years ago, based loosely off of the standard, but highly customized by the city. So that, in turn, made it difficult to integrate or to migrate going forward. So this process would put it into a recognized international standard that would help with integrations with other platforms and to move it forward to going forward into new migrations. Also increased functionality. Our data right now, we have the locations of all of our assets in these utilities. We have attribute information about that. So what this does here, the utility network, is it provides an intelligence, kind of like a digital twin for this, so that we could do things like load flow modeling, tracing of the network and stuff like that, isolation as well. It does align with our strategic plan to improve processes and increase efficiencies. And importantly, we need to replace the current solution, which is looking at end of life in 2026. So let's talk a little bit more about data standardization and what it does for the city. It actually extends editing into the web and mobile environment. So right now, the GIS staff is the ones that make changes to utility data after we receive data from Public Works. This will put it into field and manager level hands where they could update information themselves. With that, we do want to put protections in place for data integrity, and this system allows that. We can create rule-based editing so that if somebody puts a hydrant in, it has to connect to a hydrant lateral, and that also has to connect to a water main. Or we can do scripting, so if somebody puts in a new storm manhole, it automatically will populate a unique identifier that's important for other systems like asset management. It is the utility model of the future. It breaks things down into effective subnetworks. So if you think of like electric circuits, we can isolate those and find out what infrastructure we have within them. Sanitary stormwater basins, pressure zones for water. It also deals with complex modeling, so we can model treatment plants and everything within it, the substations and everything within those, and it deals better with integrations like asset management and the electric modeling that we have coming up. So speaking of increased in functionality, we have electric customer outage, stormwater flood origin, stuff like that. Because we finished with phase 1, we already have the ability to do something like isolation tracing and water. So if a main break occurs in the field, a Public Works employee is able to go in, and I've actually got a little bit of a video here that shows you can just put a point on the map and where the main break is, and it'll tell you exactly what valves you need to shut off to isolate, and more importantly, it will be able to tell you customer information of who's infected as well. So if you look here, after you run it, it does that analysis, and it shows who's affected by that main break. So that's the type of increased functionality that we're looking at with this utility network. We did a request for proposal in February 2023. It was a collaborative effort to decrease costs. So what I mean by that is the city staff did a lot of the heavy lifting on this. We wanted to own the system. We wanted to know exactly how it worked in and out. So we just had a handhold approach with Timmons Group, who we selected from 5 responses. They are a certified ESRI utility network provider. They've got 20 years of experience with utility GIS, and they've migrated several different UNIC migrations, including Disneyworld. And they led last year's water and guided us through that process. So the migration is a 3-phase approach. We did water last year and a little bit of building for stormwater and sanitary. We're looking to finish stormwater and sanitary this year before we move on to electric next year. And that would be phase 3, and I'll be back to speak of that. So what I'm recommending for this evening is approval of the resolution for an agreement with Timmons Group to finish our sanitary and stormwater migration for $99,470.
Thank you, Eric. Is there any questions up here?
Move for
Seeing
approval.
none? Okay.
Second.
I have a motion by Wirball, seconded by Folks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, Eric.
Next up, we have item 6C. Director Hannah's going to make a real brief introduction, and then City Administrator McGuire is going to make a more formal presentation.
Right there. Yep. Thanks. Okay. Thank you very much. Back on March 17th, the city staff provided an overview presentation of the fiscal year draft 25-26 budget. At that time, we said there would be an opportunity for follow-up discussion and conversation on tonight's meeting. There's been some general discussion about capital projects and some questions. So the goal for tonight is to have that discussion, and if there's any changes to the draft budget as it has been presented, that we would finalize what those changes are tonight. The deadline to pass the budget at City Council meeting is in 2 weeks on April 21st. So just wanted to give that little overview, and I'm going to just kind of turn over to Heather to kind of guide through the discussion. Thank you.
Sure, and really this is less of a formal presentation tonight and more of some questions that I received separately from some of the council members. I think Alderperson Warble was the first one that I had the discussion with regarding prioritization of the projects for our capital improvements. So the discussion I had with him, and I'll just kind of reiterate for everybody's benefit here, is that all of our capital projects were listed on page 59 of the draft budget. That encompassed about $12.4 million worth of projects. Immediately, $10 million of that can sort of be set aside for storm and street projects that were dedicated funds from our home rule sales tax increase per the resolution passed by City Council. So beyond that, we had a handful of projects remaining out of that $2.4 million, about $1 million of which was necessary infrastructure projects, maintenance, repairs for buildings, parking garage repairs. So essentially that left about $1.3 million in those funds for us for those what I'll call discretionary capital projects. So as I was speaking with some of the council members, I know that some of the questions I received were really about which projects would staff prioritize based on the list we had of the deferred projects from the presentation. So I will start this conversation by saying, you know, whatever direction council gives us is the direction we will follow in the budget and the final implementation of it. However, how we looked at it from a staff perspective was really two separate buckets of projects that were left aside in that presentation. Some of those were necessary maintenance, infrastructure-based projects, and then the other bucket of projects was those things that we want. They make things a little bit simpler for the residents. They make things a little simpler for visitors. They're things that improve the quality of life in the city, but don't necessarily have any impact on health or safety or welfare of the city. So we kind of separate those out into two different categories. And the reason that the council chambers became the project that was implemented in the budget was, number one, because it was already an approved project in the previous fiscal year. And then the second was because that impacts elected officials, staff, as well as residents. We've had complaints about the council chambers, even as recently as this year, about ADA access, about hearing issues, about visibility issues. This podium itself has become a problem for people who need to speak at it. And then also transparency and accessibility for residents that are looking at the meeting. So that was the driver behind why council chambers was implemented into this year's budget, but if council would like to have a separate discussion and direct resources a different way, we are here to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Wirball.
Okay, so thank you for bringing this back to us. So for me, I just printed out two of the slides that you presented a couple weeks ago. And the two things that stand out for me, thanks, is the council chamber renovation for $1.3 million. I didn't know when we were discussing all of this that these other projects are going to be held off. So I wasn't aware of that. So as far as priorities, I think the First Street parking garage counters for $400,000 should be a priority for several reasons. One, we did a parking study in February of 2024, and one of the recommendations was to do the parking counters in the garage to alleviate some of the weekend parking issues. So that was kind of the starting point that Desmond recommended. You know, it's also the improvements, which I see you have on here, which is great. But with First Street Plaza opening up, and I listened to that video before I came here, the presentation from Desmond, they did not take into consideration the completion of the plaza when I asked that question in February of 24. So I think it's really important to get this done to really maximize the parking on the west side and make it a better experience for visitors and residents that want to come downtown that impact our businesses in that area. And second, you have Whole Foods opening up, which we don't know what the impact's going to be on parking, right? Is it going to be real popular? Is parking going to spill over? So for me, up here, it's just a matter of priorities. I understand we can't do everything. I get that. There's only so much. I'm not looking to remove any massive infrastructure projects. I don't want to do that. I'm just looking to add the First Street parking garage counters and perhaps if there's an ADA component of the chamber that needs to be addressed. I know it's sound and I know there's different components, but for me, that's the most important piece that I would like to see in the budget. I don't know how everybody else up here feels about that, but.
And if anybody else jumps in, if I could just make a couple of responses. The problem with the council chambers itself is not really that simplistic to piecemeal. Something like the hearing loop, for example, we have to tear up the floor to do that, which then that necessitates repairing carpet and making some of those other things. So the basis of the cost for the council chamber improvements is those issues, and then the remainder of it is putting back together the paint, the ceiling, the flooring, and those kind of items. So from our perspective, it's either an all or nothing project, and the driver truly is about the technology, about the accessibility of meetings. I know you and I have had this conversation too about just the difficulty with people hearing in this chamber when our heat or our air conditioning is kicking on. People can't always see the screen, issues again with the podium. So that was really the impetus for that. The parking garage itself, before I move on to that, so we have some unofficial bid numbers that have come back. We don't know, depending on whether or not this actually gets approved by City Council, if it will have to be rebid. But we have the belief that this is going to come in lower than that 1.3, which if that is the case, that opens up some additional funding that we can do potentially some of these other projects on that list. The other part of that is the First Street parking garage counters at that $400,000 cost. That's an estimate at this point. We know there will be some engineering to that, but we also know there's going to be some improvements, some issues that we're going to have to do ongoing maintenance with those. So that one-time cost is not going to be just that one-time cost, so just another consideration as we're considering those priorities. And the other items on that, as I talk about wants versus needs, essentially, and the parking garage counters kind of fall in that wants category only because it does make things a little bit easier operationally for people visiting. But just above that on the list, we've got our IDOT annex roof replacement for $450,000. That's currently tarps, and that's got some fairly expensive equipment housed in there. So when I talk about the needs versus wants, those are the kind of things that we as a staff look at prioritizing versus the things that are quality based.
Yeah, and those are great points. And quite frankly, I mean, if the roof replacement is a priority, then make it a priority. I mean, because I remember the chairs were like $40,000 for chairs in here. That's not a priority over a roof. You know, I mean, the hearing, the accessibility in here is a priority. So I know for me, it's one of the priorities because we have so many complaints downtown with that parking deck on First Street is getting something going with the parking garage counters to make the experience better for residents that come here, that patronize our businesses. It's been going on for years. I know you also have improvements, I think of $300,000 for maintenance and repairs in the garage as well.
Correct.
Desmond said it's really an odd garage to navigate through. Doors are locked, elevators don't go up all the way where they're supposed to. I know we can't address it all at once, but I think we need to get started with something. Or we did this 14 months ago, and I haven't seen anything as far as improving our park and even signage. Nothing. So that's where I'm at with it. I don't know how everybody else feels on it, but
I just have a quick response to that, if I can jump in. I have no problems with what Councilmember Woodball is asking for in regards to, $400,000 for these counters, if my colleagues decide to go in that direction, if it makes sense for the budget, with all due respect. But at the same time, as Councilmember Woodball was saying, I'd also like to see a plan in place that zeroes in more on the issues that we're having on the roof, because over the last 2 or 3 weeks prior to getting a little chilly right now, there have been a few nights where the weather has been nice. And there's cars still up there, and we've spent some money on security. We've spent money on the security barriers, meaning security cameras. And I would just like that to be tied into a more comprehensive plan where we're not going to have anybody up there doing donuts, whatever they're doing up there. That's all I'm asking for, if we're going to go in that direction.
Any other questions, comments? Go ahead, Jamie.
Thank you. I agree that there is a need in the parking garage for the counters. I agree that there's a need for the security issue as well, as Alderman Besner said. I am very concerned about pushing off the ADA accessibility, the sound improvements, especially the hearing loop. After talking to people that have hearing impairments, talking to people that have participated in some of the focus groups with the Equity and Inclusion Commission regarding general accessibility in this building, being able to hear us through the microphones, through the Zoom meetings, through being in this room. Consistently, we have problems with video that doesn't have audio along with it. I've tried to send videos of our IMEA meetings from previous months where there's no audio that's combined with that, so we don't have a record to show our residents of really important meetings. And very concerned about not doing that and continuing to push that off. I know that is a large expense, and I know that it sounds like there's not a lot of opportunity to take pieces of that. Specifically, that hearing loop is a really big deal for a lot of people. And I'm not really sure how we can continue to push that off, especially with a growing senior population who doesn't necessarily want to either try and traverse the stairs, deal with elevators, trying to get in here. We have to be able to make this government transparent for everybody. And if we're not able to record these meetings, if we're not able to display them properly, I don't know how we can say that we're being fully transparent. So if we're not going to invest in that and invest in our residents in this way, I don't know if we're doing the right thing for them.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So Bill, not to put you on the spot, but if you were going to look at something in the left-hand column, $400,000, $450 for some of these different projects, are you thinking about like a one-to-one swap for some of these things? Or are you thinking about shrinking? So like IT, ERP, replacement capital, existing. If ultimately this body says, hey, we want to pursue something on the left, are you thinking that, it's going to be a straight swap? It would be shrinking one of these things, like, okay, maybe we can only do half of, maintenance projects. Can you give us an idea of what we're talking about?
Sure. I don't know with some of these that there's really a shrinkage option. It's kind of we're doing the project or we're not. Some of these items could, be a more deeper conversation, about kind of the status of them, where they're at, and what that process looks like. I think it kind of has to be on kind of a case-by-case basis a little bit. If there's something in particular that we can take a look at down the road, if there's, flexibility to sort of restart conversations later this fall with some of these things, that's potentially an option as well.
Yeah.
Versus right now trying to do these kind of swaps, I guess you would say.
Yeah, because I would agree. I think we're all in agreement, especially with the parking garage continues to be a challenge. We're looking for ways. We did the study. we want to get moving on ways that we can make that a better experience, safer, et cetera. I'm just curious, when you get down to the numbers, if you're not talking about wanting to grow, the size of the pie and spending more money, if you're trying to make it work, then what are you trading out on the right, and being very specific about, hey, this is what we're not going to be able to fund exactly the same way, or hey, we can. Maybe there's something in there that I know it feels like a priority right now, but maybe you can stretch it for another year. But I'd like to have more clarity about what's on that right-hand side of, if you are going to swap something from the left in to say we do want to make this a priority, okay, what are we going to go without, next year?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Heather, I wanted to thank you for clarifying the issues if we wanted to do parts compared to all, because that was a thought I had at first as well. And coming from a family that has a little bit of a construction background, that was always the thought of, hey, if you're going to do it in one swap. And I'm starting to wonder if that's what we do with the parking deck. It's a wonderful point that Alderperson Werble made. If there needs to be improvements to the parking garage as well, and the counters aren't part of it, I wonder if it would be in our best interest to go, let's do it all at one time, do it right, so we're not doing things in parts and having to constantly come back and have disruptions. Unfortunately, looking at what we have on the right side, I don't know if there's anything we can swap it out with this year. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I think it needs to be a priority in the future, if not the future being next year to be. I just want us to start looking and being like, okay, if we are valuing that, we're saying it is a need, because that's what we are based up here on now. We're based up here on needs. A lot of our wants, based on our budget and based on the money coming in, the wants are gone, guys. They're not here anymore. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation I think we're living in based on what we're being presented, based with our numbers that are coming in. We have to start doing these needs correctly so we don't have problems down the road. And I don't want to rush into doing something like the counters now and then being like, wow, a couple of years from now we got to replace this because this is. I think we need to take our time. I think we need to do it right, fix the whole garage as one piece. That's my take on it.
Any other comments regarding this? I mean, I'll just say for me, the $1.3 million for the chambers to me is extremely excessive. I know quite a bit about construction, but I'm not the one doing the project. But I also want to take into consideration the $300,000 that was stolen from us this year into this conversation too. I mean, that's a real number too. That I wouldn't feel so bad maybe about the $1.3 million, but that was an issue that came up. How did we ever get a 40% surplus in our budget? Because we haven't saved a dollar since I've been here. I'm just curious how that happens.
Are you talking about our year end?
Just we always have savings.
The fund balance?
Reserve, yes.
Sure. So I think it's started increasing, gradually over the years. It's certainly a very good reserve. It really helps with our overall financial profile. We've whittled it down a little bit over the last couple of years, and I think this budget actually proposes whittling it down a little bit more to try and subsidize the water fund and some of these capital projects, really pushing kind of what our collective comfort level is with some of this in terms of the city's overall fiscal picture. So I think it's a very healthy reserve and very appropriate based on our current financial situation.
And
I was going to chime. It's been about the mid to high 30s for many, many years.
And that is a year over year that as projects coming in either under budget or as expenditures aren't made for various reasons, that adds incrementally to it. So that isn't something that's only happened within a couple of years.
So if we were to say we're good with everything except for the $1.3 million, you have $1 million to work with.
Correct. So the other option, obviously, too, is right now it's reflected in the budget. If council wanted to proceed with that, just because it's in the budget does not mean that expenditure would get made. We still have the opportunity to either bid that out and present it to council, take a look at what the numbers end up being, and make that determination at that point. And if council decides not to move forward with it for whatever reason, then potentially we would have just a $1.3 million surplus built into the budget or the potential to do something else.
Go ahead, Brian.
To your point, then why can't you add the first three parking counters if it's just in the budget? Because don't you have a $3 million surplus?
No. Our budget this year is $30,000. Were we in that?
At the end, don't you have $3 million that you have wiggle room at the end of of the upcoming
The actual
budget
budget
for next
number is
year, not this
30,000.
year, next year.
Our 26 budget.
Yeah,
Yeah, in the general fund?
yeah.
It's pretty much flat. There's
Yeah,
not much.
I think it's like
There's nothing.
$30,000.
So why can't we put, if we haven't decided what we're doing up here, why can't you put the 400,000 and when we get to that point, and we make a determination, let's say we decide, hey, we're gonna do the chamber, well then, obviously, there's no funding for the first, you know what I'm saying? Because how do you get it in there? You know, it's so challenging now to get things on the agenda. How do you get something like that back in the budget for consideration?
I mean, certainly at council's direction, we could do that, but if we put that in the budget now, we would be operating in a deficit budget, which I don't think Bill wants to present to city council as something that we would be approving at that point.
So you just want to leave it like open-ended, just have the dollar amount in there so it's accounted for, and then depending on when the prices come through? Is that what you're
Yeah, why not?
suggesting?
Why not? Why, does it have to have a dollar amount? I mean, can the project be
A capital project,
a
like
capital
essentially a blank
project
line.
without a dollar amount attached, until we determine what we're doing with the,
Are you talking about, I think we need to have a budget so that staff knows how to proceed, you know, going forward with beginning the fiscal year. So we know those resources are allocated to something very specific. They can have their plans in place so they can go about and, you know, start
I
implementing.
mean, because I'll just be upfront with everybody here. I'm not gonna spend $1.3 million on renovating this chamber. I'm not gonna spend $50,000 on chairs. I just don't think the chair, now, the ADA accessibility, absolutely. I think those are priorities, you know, the hearing impaired, visual, you know, absolutely. But there are certain things that I think are, you know, you have screens, you have the conference rooms, you know.
Yeah, I think the conference rooms account for about $90,000 of that
Yeah.
budget, if I don't.
It all adds up.
It
You
does,
know, and when you
absolutely.
take it and you add it all up, then you've got yourself your parking counter. So that's kind of where I'm going with it, is I'm just telling you, that for me, that this is not a priority, the whole thing at 1.3 million. Components of it, absolutely. I know you said the hearing, you got to get with the ventilation and all that stuff.
There are
I
definitely
understand
pieces of
that.
it tied to that. And just as a reminder, I know that when we talked about this originally, we said there are ways to delineate out some of those expenditures, for example, furniture, for example, the dens and committee rooms, so we can have that discussion when the bids come in about, do we want to include these things or do we not want to include these things at this point? So there is a way to, you know, I don't want to use the term value engineer, but reduce those costs slightly. The bulk of the cost is in doing those functionalities for the HVAC, for the IT, for those type of pieces, and then putting it back together. But certainly there is that opportunity to say we're not going to replace the furniture at this point. We're going to leave that as is to cut out some of the costs.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
And if, like I said, if council is comfortable leaving that project and bidding it out and seeing where the numbers land, at that point, if we do not like where the numbers are, we can say we're not going to approve this project, and then staff can have that direction to go explore some of these other projects instead.
Well, and that's kind of what I'd like to see. I don't want it whittled down to one project, all due respect. I want to see what we think is a major need of the entire group and of the entire council, and what our city staff kind of looks at as well. I remember, unfortunately, our water infrastructure is in dire need of help. And I know the counters are a wonderful project, not denying that, but I think the discussion is worthwhile to have up here, and maybe a little bit more direction from city staff members too, as to if there is free money, what is your suggestion? I mean, you guys are the experts here.
Sure.
We'd love to hear from you. We understand it is our decision ultimately, but would love to know if there is that money, if projects do come under, if we decide, yeah, we don't want this, okay, but then what's the next need to keep St. Charles moving along?
Jamie, go ahead.
If I can ask, am I understanding correctly that that's the intent of this, is this would be the prioritization?
And it's not an exact order, but yes.
From your perspective as staff, all of you collectively, that should those items be available, should that money be available because we're not spending it on other things?
These are the things that we're looking at.
We don't do council chambers for whatever the reason is we choose not to, and if we do have funds, then these would be the order in which you would recommend.
These aren't in the exact order. These are just the list of items that were in no particular order, projects that were either under discussion or priority projects that needed to be done.
So would we be able to create a list of prioritization for the funds should they become available then, and that would then be used in that way.
And I'll just bring up 2 points to that. One, I know that Bill is prepping for his next quarterly finance update in light of our previous budget discussion, so planning that for end of May? End of May? Okay. And at that point, one, we can start kind of opening that dialogue a little bit and just having it generally before we know where some of these numbers come in, or alternatively, if some of these numbers have come in, that's the opportunity we can start talking about that as well.
And I guess that was my last question then, is when would that list of priorities have to be created by us or I guess approved by us, or would that have to happen even?
If we have the direction from council tonight, keep the council chambers in, let's see where the bids come out, and we see that the bids come out unfavorably, and for some reason we don't want to move forward with that, at that point we would present that piece of information to council, and then either on the heels of that or the next meeting schedule a discussion about where do we want to focus those funds instead. So it would be, within 2 weeks.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Remind me, where did the $400,000 for the parking garage counter, where did that projected number come from?
Derek, I believe that was a consultant given number.
Yeah, that's correct. We did have a consultant meet us at the parking deck, and they went back to their office, and then about 2 weeks later gave us that quote. I think about $40,000 of it was just for design, and the remainder was installation.
Okay, so in theory, if you want to pursue garage counters, with everything on the right or whatever, I mean, hypothetically, you could take that bid to 5 different firms and see, and then you could get through, finding a way to make it. $400,000 seems a lot for basically a ticker, somebody driving through and counting. The other thing, the garage counters, I know we all want to do something with it. I'm a little nervous. Like, the garage counters aren't going to change the construction of that building and the tight turns and some of the accessibility issues. I would like to do something with the garage counters just to give people more visibility about what is available, especially on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but $400,000 also seems high, just like, talking about redoing this room at 1.3 seems, it's real money at some point. I'll just go, again, we're talking about, I'm curious, when you talk about potentially, Bill, with some of the stuff that's on the right that, is we need to do some of these things, understanding, hey, if we're trying to work some of the stuff in on the left, actual dollars and project specific of, I don't know what existing city facility maintenance projects mean and what dollar amounts associated with it, because maybe there is something on there that's like, what, we can kick that can down the road another year and find a way, maybe not for $400,000 for the parking garage counters, maybe it's, $275, maybe $300, but I'd like, because that feels like that's how you budget, right? You can live with $375 not being done for X project because we can live another year and find a way to do some of the stuff, regardless of the council chambers. There was no question in there. It was just
There was a question.
just trailing off. So.
Just a thought.
Just a thought.
Any other comments on the capital project stuff? No? Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so for clarification, it sounds like council is comfortable keeping it as is for the budget right now, understanding that number will come back to council before any decision is made, and at that point, we can make that determination about whether to proceed with that project, or if not, get alternative direction on how to spend those funds.
Correct.
Yeah, because right now they're just kind of estimates until we actually go bid and
Correct.
to Alderman Werbel's point, there are things that maybe we can do differently, and there might be.
And there will be those opportunities, right?
Yeah.
To downsize or right-size the project. It'll just be, the bulk of the costs are going to be in putting in some of those infrastructure items necessary to accomplish our goals, and then put the room back together.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're all estimates, like all capital projects. You got a bid, you put it out, something comes up, it's over, but then you've got one or two that are less. So I always like to see, and I know when Bill and I meet, is just, in our capital project budget, we had $12.4 million that we're estimating. When all said and done, what was the plus and minus variance to this one? Was under $100,000, but we ate it up in something else, like things we've already approved this year.
Right.
That were budgeted.
Exactly.
And some come in substantially
Correct.
lower. So.
And it frees up some funds to either
Right.
increase the size of the project or do something else.
Right, and then just being aware as this body to see what are those like, and something may come in really unreasonably great, and we can throw something on that we haven't considered just yet. So I'm assuming it's an ongoing discussion.
Absolutely.
But we did do a budget to start and then work through it as we go through, correct?
Correct.
Right, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
All righty, next up, we have item 7A. Deputy Chief Clark is going to make a presentation. Congratulations, number one. and
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
You
it.
have the floor, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This is a recommendation to approve a resolution for a contract and license agreement with AID, which is the Association of Individual Development, for a period of 1 year. This would be our 11th year that we would have the contract with AID. Each year, we negotiate a 1-year contract that accounts for a full-time social worker who is housed at our police facility and a liaison for both the police department and the fire department. We would also have 24/7 on-call system, which is referred to as victim services, should a social worker be needed at any time of the day, 24/7, 365. This past year in 2024, we assisted 303 individuals, 290 of which were residents of St.Charles. And those numbers were actually lower than the previous year slightly. However, the total service hours provided were higher, being 1,499 hours compared to 1,351 the year before. So this contract also includes office space and computer equipment that's housed at the police department. Now, funding for this program has historically been done through the 708 board by way of a grant. At this time, I'm just requesting that the contract with AID to be approved, as Acting Chief Majewski will be making a presentation to the 708 board next Wednesday to request the funds that would be provided to the police department, as well as other health service providers. So with that, I thank you, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Deputy Chief Clark?
Second.
I have a motion by Bongard, seconded by Gem. Roll call, please.
Petrulla?
Yes.
Wirbel?
Yes.
Besnard?
Yes.
Kultaitis?
Yes.
Folks?
Yes.
Bungard?
Yes.
Munn?
Yes.
Lencioni? Gem?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you very
much, Deputy Chief. Now we move along to item 8A. Chief Mothy is going to make a presentation.
Good evening. I come to you tonight to ask for a recommendation to approve a resolution to execute a license agreement with the St. Charles Park District to use Langham Park for the fireworks event again in 2025. This is the same utilization as they have the last 2 years. They'll be using the same pyrotechnics contractor as well, and the licensing agreement that is attached is the same one that Attorney Peppers had utilized the previous year.
Wonderful. Any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Wirbel.
Our notice is going to go out to the residents about the no parking areas on the east side.
That may be a police-related question I can't give you an answer to right now.
Okay, could you follow up with
You bet.
me? Perfect, thank you.
Any other
We
questions?
did do those last year, so
You
we will
did?
continue to do
Okay,
those
all right.
again.
If they can, like, multiple somehow website, just so people know that too. I know we dealt with that a lot.
Yeah.
I think we did work with them a little bit on changing their form of notice last year because people were a little bit confused or didn't get them. So we'll continue to work with them to make sure that they're doing the same postcards they do as well as some additional postings.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion by
Second.
Bongard, seconded by Folks. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
Chief
Chief.
Mothy. Next up, we have public comments. Please don't be shy. Step right up.
Hi, my name is Steve Leffler. I'm a resident of the 4th Ward. I'm one of the people who lives pretty darn close. I don't know if you have too many other residents that live much closer to the parking garage than I do. I get a lot of noise laying in bed, sitting in my Archie chair watching TV, whatever it is. I get a lot of noise from that. And it comes from the cars, the kids, the motorcycles. It also comes from the units on the bottom floor. They're the cooling units. And since Holmes were talking about, spending a little money there, it'd be nice to make it a little bit more pleasant for the residents. During the hot summer months, when the air conditioning is running in all those places. It echoes throughout that garage, and you can hear it very clearly inside my apartment with the doors and the windows closed. So it'd be nice to have that looked at also as one of those items if you're going to look at a comprehensive fix to the whole thing to make it a little nicer for us residents that are downtown. Along those same lines, it'd be nice to have a quiet resident sign, some sort of sign along First Street that says, hey, please be quiet for our neighbors in the area here, because every night there's drag racing that's going on all over the place in the area. And I've gone up to the roof of the garage. I'm that old guy who's retired. I'm doing nothing now. So I hear some noise. I hear the kids going up there, and I go up there, and they've been chased off by the cops the last time I did it, which was nice. But it's all the time. It's almost every night they're up there. So it'd be nice to have something happen. All right? That's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Go ahead, step right up.
Hello there. Hi, my name is Michael Nelson. Don't worry, Ron, I found something to talk about, so not so tongue-tied.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to first, I'll try not to just comment about things. I was very excited by this meeting. This is a very fun executive session. I wanted to recognize the AID contract. That is an incredible thing. I'm so glad to know that that is something that St. Charles does. Wild amount of reckless support to not always having multiple sources of care when there are emergent situations. I just wanted to recognize that and say that as a resident. Thank you all for doing that. I'd love to see more of it. Thank you for it. On the topic of the capital projects, I had two small questions. I think I misunderstood something that was said by Alderman Weber. You maybe had said that 300,000 was stolen?
Correct.
Is that something I can ask about, or is that not something? Because I want to make sure I heard
I won't
that.
get into it farther, but yes.
Okay, gotcha. I did not hear that wrong. I also wanted to ask, what are the garage counters? What does that mean? What are garage counters that we've been talking about? What would they do? I might not need to know, but
Basically, it'll the number of cars that come in per level, it would count the cars, correct?
Okay, so then folks can know if they come in.
You keep going until you see green, basically, yes.
Cheers.
Yes.
And then the point that I first wanted to come up about is, I don't know if this is a resource that you all know about, or if this is something that I'm just a guy coming in saying, hey, I know something and you already do. But there is an incredible resource called Strong Towns. I wish I was prepared to say something about it. But an economic look at the future of cities and seeing if the system of growth that we have been using as a nation since after, specifically World War II, if that is a sustainable style of development. Thankfully, St. Charles has been around for a long while. It is, I would say, a healthy city, but if we are talking about economics and can we support moving in these different infrastructure directions, I just recognize that Strong Towns is a great resource. I don't know exactly how to offer anything to the clerk, or if videos are worthwhile. It's a different style that people get information from. I just wanted to recognize that there's value there. There are local groups associated with that. It's a national and then local group that Batavia, one of the elder people, hosts. So I just wanted to toss that out there and say thank you all again, and congratulations in the different ways on the election results.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, is there any more public comment? Anyone online for public comment? Seeing none, any additional items from mayor, council, or staff right now? Do not see any. I'm going to now request that we go into executive session as warranted. So with that being said, I need everyone to leave. Motion and a second to go into executive session.
Second.
Moved by Jen, seconded by Folk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Nays? I don't see any. The ayes have it.